fantastic week to be a professional wrestling fan again. I have re-fallen in love with the wonderful, wonderful world of professional wrestling, and it's so nice to hear professional wrestlers call themselves wrestlers. Amazing. I'm on cloud nine. I loved All Out. I loved it. We're going to talk about that today. I'm Jack Slammer. With me, as always, is my brother, Steve Slammer. Steve, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Competition has arrived. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you said All Out because when you said you had fallen in love with professional wrestling again, I automatically assumed that you meant Reggie. So I was glad to see that it was something on the other brand, on the other show, the other company that has apparently piqued your interest, or as the great CM Punk would say in the post-show interview, gave you a boner for the new world that we're living in.
Well, here's the thing, man. So on Friday, I went to a really, really, really good independent wrestling show. And I'm just thinking to myself now, because I saw some guys who we will definitely see next level at some point. Now, I don't know where they're going to be on the card, but they will definitely make it to that next level some point. And it just does my heart some good to know that there's going to be places for those guys to go. Not just a place for those guys to go, but places as in options, as in two viable major platforms where they could showcase their skills and, continue to build this resurgence of professional wrestling. And you said it best. There's competition now. I'm looking at the AEW roster after what happened, and for those of you who did not watch All Out, I'm going to give you a brief spoiler right now, as though you haven't heard about it. Bryan Daniel, or he goes by Bryan Daniels now.
That is his real name, Bryan Danielson.
Okay,
the former Daniel Bryan.
The former Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson, is back as a babyface. Adam Cole is here as a heel. Baby. Adam Cole, baby, is here. But he's here as a heel, and he teamed up with the Elite, which is a very, very interesting move, which I actually did not hate. Because it's like, okay, how many guys from the other company can come in and just automatically have like a freaking love fest with the audience? One of those guys was bound to have to be a heel, right? So I liked it. Then you had Ruby Soho, who came in, made her debut.
Former Ruby Riott, yeah.
Former Ruby Riott. I thought that, and we'll get into that. I think she should have came in and whooped ass. I don't think she deserved that win. Not immediately. I think Thunder Rosa should have had it because she's a fan favorite. She's worked her ass off, and she's been the number 2 contender. It made the most sense, but she's probably going to be feuding with Red Velvet for a while. So we'll get to see that go down. So I figure we haven't done this yet.
You're forgetting about Minoru Suzuki?
Oh God, please!
On a show of surprises, and the very first one out the gate, Minoru Suzuki coming in to confront Jon Moxley. But we'll get into that.
We will get into that, and I'm so sorry because I'm actually a big Suzuki fan. So. All right, any of you Japanese wrestling fans, I apologize. Please do not beat the crap out of me in public when you see me. It was an honest mistake. I was not disrespecting the Japanese wrestling legend.
They will leave you alone so long as you're not wearing that replica 24/7 title that you like to wear around. That's all.
Dude, you know what? Part of me, dude, as a joke for you, I want to buy you that belt. That's like your birthday present. You know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to have the rattlesnake style WWE belt, and I'm going to have that. Let you think that that's the belt I bought you. Then I'm like, oh, no. Drape it over my shoulder. That's my belt. Here's your belt. And then it's the 24/7 title.
Now. We both know that if you're going to go get yourself a belt, it's going to be that classic Intercontinental Championship belt.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we've said this every single show. It is the most beautiful belt that we have ever seen. So I am going to apologize to everybody for a moment here. Everybody knows I'm constantly rooting for Jungle Boy. I think he's got a big career ahead of him. I think he's one of the best. Actually, I think arguably in terms of homegrown AEW talent, he's probably the best one so far who didn't like build a name for himself elsewhere just to come into the company. Um, but I miss the Best Friends and Jurassic Express versus the Hardy Family Office. It was a 10-man tag. I'm sick of that gimmick in AEW. I joined in a little bit late because I had to hang out with my daughter, or actually, I got to hang out with my daughter, I should say. Well, I had to let her go to sleep, right? So she has a routine. I was doing the dad thing.
You could have asked CM Punk to put her to sleep. I mean,
you could go to sleep. You know what? I think child services would have a major problem with me, like giving my daughter the GTS.
No, you're right. The only one on the roster that wrestles children is Kenny Omega. But I digress.
We digress here. Oh God. He has a nickname on another podcast, but I don't think we have the juice to say that nickname out loud. All right, so this match, how did you feel about it? Did I miss anything special?
No. The Hardy Family Office needs to go away. I think you said everyone's sick of the Hardy Family Office. I think the one that's most sick of it has to be Matt Hardy. I mean, for a guy who's positioned as this he's going to open doors. It's the Hardy Family Office. The marquee that lights up when he comes out is like in the form of money. Yeah. Have they ever won a match?
They have not won a damn match. Not that I have seen. Maybe they have. Oh wait, yeah. They did a couple weeks back. They won a trios tag match.
Well, here's what I'll tell you about this. I mean, it was the pre-show free match, right? So yeah. Typically the baby faces win the pre-show pre-match just to kind of get you interested in ordering the pay-per-view. Although, my $50 was locked in the moment CM Punk was announced, but That's just me. The match itself was what it was. Jungle Boy wins with the snare trap for the submission victory. Nothing to really write home about. Everyone had their little moment to shine, and that's really all I have to say about it. I mean, this was the free bread. This wasn't even the appetizer. This was the free bread.
Yeah.
Before the appetizer came, before your multi-course meal that led up to the dessert, that was what happened after the main event.
Dude, okay, so if you had, because we are going to grade every match today.
Let's do it.
Because it is a review. I am disqualifying myself from grading this one because I didn't see it. What would you grade the match?
It was a C+. I mean, like I said, it did what it was supposed to do in terms of, just filling the time, giving somebody giving somebody who might be on the fence an appetizer. But I don't think that there's anybody out there. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe research will prove me wrong, but it's kind of hard for me to believe that there was somebody out there who was on the fence about ordering All Out and then saw that and said, yes, I'm going to fork down my $50 now. So it was what it was.
I agree. I think it was sold to whoever was going to buy it the minute that CM Punk put his name on it. I think that's what maximized the amount of buys. Personally, I think with all the new talent going in, they want to do right by Jungle Boy and a few of the other guys who've been there for a while, but they didn't really quite have anything for them this pay-per-view. So they're like, hey, we're going to put you all together. Thanks for your hard work. The 5 guys on... What's up?
Well, don't be so sure about that, because who came back at the close of the main event? Jungle Boy,
Jurassic.
Right, even Marco Stunt, I think was.
I like Marco Stunt. I like Marco Stunt.
I think what we're gonna see, and we'll get a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but I think what we're seeing is they're keeping Jungle Boy in the vicinity of that main event scene that is now becoming very crowded with massive star power.
Yep.
But he's still there.
He is. They're keeping him.
Exactly, and that is what is needed to do. It is not his time yet, but as we're gonna talk about when we get into the Punk Allen match, there are ways to elevate that talent, and I'm excited to see how a Jungle Boy can benefit from this influx of just absolute star power.
Well, here's what I see now. I see you've got three legitimate A-list stars now on the roster. You've got a solid B tier, you've got a C tier, and then you have a bunch of young, hungry freaking wolves in that locker room who want to elevate themselves, and now they have something to aspire to be. I think it's only going to be better in the long run for the talent. I think a lot of guys are gonna get a little less time on TV, but they're gonna be elevated in ways that they never thought possible.
Well, this is where the adults in the room need to start actually deciding who's getting TV time, why are they getting TV time, what is it advancing, and honestly, for a company like AEW, who now has the Friday night show, and they have that AEW Dark on the internet, which is hours. There is not a reason to for example, to give 20 minutes of TV time to the Hardy family office anymore. Push them
Exactly.
to dark
Mm-hmm.
and save that TV time to push what's going on with your Malachi Blacks, with your, what's going on with the Elite, and we'll talk about that here as we go along. Miro, as we'll talk about when the first match. So
Yeah.
there's just a lot of stuff going on, and now somebody has to, again, be the adult in the room. It's business now. You can't worry about hurt feelings and your pet projects. There has to be a plan to maximize this talent and to maximize on this opportunity, this buzz that's now going around, because it is a real buzz.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with you. Now, as I was saying, like, remember what I remember in so many podcasts with WCW, the one thing that a lot of the wrestlers missed about having two major corporations was now the wrestlers actually had leverage. So if they were unhappy in one spot, they could go to another spot. Now it's one of those things where I feel like the other company that we're not going to talk about today, those wrestlers are now going to have power in their hands also to be able to say, hey, I'm not going to let you take my character to this dumbass cartoony spot. We're going to change that. Or they at least have a little more leverage.
Well, you say we're not going to talk about them, but let's actually talk about them for a minute, because in my opinion, everything positive going on over in AEW right now is happening because of WWE. So if you go back a year, which is a little unfair because it was the pandemic, but look at what's happened. So, it started, in my opinion, when you bring in Miro, the former Rusev, and they saddle him with that awful best man gimmick, and they eventually figured it out, and now he's back to being a beast. WWE started with that, but then they got away from it. They started getting cute. They started doing the Rusev Day nonsense, right? Malachi Black, when he was Aleister Black, awesome promos. He's over here now. I'm digging what they're doing with him. Christian Cage, he comes back from injury, and he was never going to be put in this position in WWE, and they just let him go. They let him go. They let Black go. So as opposed to like in WCW versus the WWF back in the 90s, when it was, to your point, hey, I have another place to go. In these cases, with the exception of my understanding of Adam Cole, who they were trying, and probably Danielson, who they were trying to re-sign, in the case of Black, in the case of Miro, in the case of Christian Cage, in the case of maybe Bray Wyatt coming down the road, in the case of Ruby Riott, they just let these people go.
Yeah. You are correct in that respect. They let these people go, and they basically just made AEW what they are today by virtue of just letting solid talent go. But in fairness, there's, like we were just saying, WWE had a massive roster. They have about $120 million on payroll. They want to get that down to about $70 million worth of payroll. You got all this talent, not a lot of TV to push them. Now, it's probably not a bad thing for WWE either, if you really want to think about it, because now instead of keeping these guys on ice, they can go somewhere else, stay relevant, keep building their names, and then, hey, 2 to 3 years later, this is what's going to happen. Every 2 to 3 years, guys from AEW are going to go back to WWE and vice versa. We've seen that dance happen. But to your point, you are correct. Like, what's happened in WWE has given AEW a significant boost because AEW is the company that has the pockets to pay these guys what they're worth. So instead of those guys just waiting on the couch, with their millions and millions of dollars waiting for the WWE to call them back. They get to stay active, make even more money at AEW, and call it and keep it going. But speaking of the first match, you had a thought there.
No, I was going to agree with everything that you said. I think that it's an opportunity. All they can do is, as I've been saying the last couple episodes, all they can do is fuck it up. And hey, before we get into the first match, the last Dynamite before this last Wednesday,
yeah,
I hated every minute of that show.
You did.
I thought they screwed up the bill to Punk and Darby Allin.
Mm-hmm.
The close of the show with the Elite beating down all the baby faces in the cage was ridiculous. And I was like, what are we doing? And then they come back here and they get it right. And I think that's everyone's got all this positivity as well. We should, and optimism about what's going to happen next. But then a show like Dynamite this past Wednesday just makes me just pump the brakes a little bit, because they, with all this talent and all this opportunity, they could fuck it up. And as a matter of fact, and as we talk about some of these matches, in my opinion, they got some of it wrong. Now that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But with that said, let's get into the first match, shall we?
Let's get into the first match, and goddamn, I love this match. Like, you and I were chatted up on Facebook last night during the whole event, here and there, little bits and pieces. But was this not just a good old-fashioned hoss fight between two big boys working stiff? Miro finally got tested. Kingston put on a great performance. The way that Kingston was selling punches while no selling punches was freaking amazing. How he's getting hit and you just see the slobber going down his face, and he's trying to take him tough for the first time in a long time. I mean, Miro hadn't really been in the ring longer than 7 minutes, they were saying before. This is like the longest match, and I think both guys delivered. And did you see Miro's pec, bro? From those chops?
His chest was dark, and he's a darker skinned guy to begin with.
Yeah.
When he was having trouble lifting the belt at the end, I wasn't sure if that was legit, because that was the side with that pec that had all the bruising on it.
Yep.
Like that was rough.
Those guys both worked stiff. They both brought it. They put on an amazing match. And dude, that's all you really want to see from a hoss fight. You want to see some good wrestling, some good near falls. For me, I was thoroughly entertained from front to back. I did not see anything in that match that I did not like. It definitely makes me want to see what happens next for Kingston, who I feel deserves some great stuff. But then also now I'm like, well, who do they have for Miro who's going to push him like Kingston just did? That's my next question, because it's got to be a hoss. It's got to be somebody you believe who can beat him, or you just feed him some guppies until you can find a whale, right?
Well, I think they did enough here to warrant a rematch with Kingston. As a matter of fact, that Chicago crowd was hot from start to finish of the show.
They were.
But with the forget about the surprises for a minute, and forget about Punk for a minute, since it was his first match. Of the AEW regulars, there's an argument to be made that the loudest pop of the night was for Eddie Kingston.
Yep, 100%.
That crowd was all about him. I loved his Redeem These Nuts shirt.
Yep.
I love that shirt. But it was a logical match. I think the ending was a little too convoluted for my liking, with the low blow, especially since he's supposed to be this beast. I'm glad that they didn't have him tap him to the accolade or whatever he calls it now. But I thought it was a great match. I thought that they did enough to protect Kingston to warrant a rematch if they decide to go back there. I think based on the reaction of that crowd, they should.
Yeah.
Because to your point, there's really nothing who's around for Miro to work with right now until they identify that person. And by the way, based on this, that person could end up being Eddie Kingston.
Yeah. 100%.
As a matter of fact, I had this thought during this match, because I at first I didn't like Miro as the TNT champion, and now I'm kind of taking to it. Although I gotta say, the white strap with the green ribboning on the belt, just I don't like that. I like the red strap, and I was accepting the black strap, but the white strap just doesn't work for me.
It only works with the Intercontinental belt. Every other belt's just not my thing with the white strap.
But I had this thought of, because I keep thinking to myself, who would make a really good TNT champion? I'm glad that they're going with Miro, and the thought that I had is eventually you have Kingston beat Miro, and then he has a very short title reign before he drops it to the guy who I think would make an excellent TNT champion, and that would be MJF.
MJF would be sensational. You were thinking
Yeah.
MJF. I was thinking Malachi Black, but MJF would probably be better because Malachi's got one of those gimmicks where he doesn't need the belt.
Yeah, I think MJF. Well, we'll talk about that when we get to that match, but he needs something,
Yeah.
and I have some thoughts. So, but yeah, so Kingston and Miro, solid opening match. The crowd was hot. They did just enough. Grading this match, I gave it an A-.
You gave it an considering the pop, considering I could find nothing wrong with this match whatsoever. I gave it a solid A. Solid A with it.
Like I said, the minus was just for the low blow at the end. Like, I just didn't like it. But
for me, I wasn't really taken back by the low blow because part of me was like, you know what? This guy's withstood everything he's thrown at him. Miro is still technically kind of on the gate of being a heel and a baby face. He's kind of in between right now. So I'm cool with the low blow. Solid A for me.
Yeah, I worry about I understand God's favorite champion thing is kind of meant to be, like, heelish. But, he's supposed to be a beast. He's supposed to be God's favorite champion. Then he has to kick Eddie Kingston in the balls to beat him. It's like, okay. Good match, though.
It was a great match. Speaking of really, really, really good matches, dare I say great matches, and it starts with me. I'm sorry. You walk out to Wild Thing, and I actually believe you. You already go up a letter grade. I don't care if you just go out to the ring and take a crap in a box, right? Like, you're automatically up a grade for me. But Moxley versus Satoshi Kojima. Admittedly, I've seen a couple of Satoshi's matches. I didn't know how huge he was in New Japan. That's on me, everybody. But those two had a sensational match. It was very hard-hitting. It was very back and forth. A lot of stuff I loved in there. Yeah, there was some stuff that was a little herky-jerky, a little glitchy here and there, but nothing that took me out of the match, right? Like, I'm okay with things being herky-jerky, and in fact, sometimes I think it adds to the match when it's not perfect and all flowy, especially when you got two rough guys. I had nothing bad to say about this match. I was entertained. I loved the run-in after the match was there. What were your thoughts on this one, Steve?
Hey, so good crossover match for that niche American audience that likes New Japan stuff. Going back to what we were talking about at the beginning about AEW now being competition, but part of the other thing with their ability to maintain that is not just the people that they're bringing in, but also the fact that they cater to these little niche audiences, right? So
yeah,
even though we were both negative about the Nick Gage thing a couple weeks,
we were.
They did it.
Yeah.
They've got this partnership with Impact Wrestling, which, I could take or leave. I think Impact's just not on the level, but that's fine. But they're doing it, and now they have this partnership with New Japan, and they're bringing in not just random New Japan guys, but like legit New Japan guys, right?
Yeah.
So, we got to see Satoshi Kojima. The match itself was fine. The double paradigm shift at the end, fine. The money moment of Minoru Suzuki coming out, and that's going to be for anyone who hasn't seen Minoru Suzuki work, they're apparently giving it away on free TV because that match was announced for Dynamite.
Damn.
Moxley and Minoru Suzuki, that's gonna be rough.
For those of you who are listening on the podcast right now, I've got goosebumps right now because JR made a really good comment on commentary, but he was only half joking. He was like, yeah, I had dinner with Suzuki one time, and I was afraid to chew too loud. Like, that's a guy in the locker room you just don't mess with.
Yeah, the Wild Thing song is over. I had this thought. The Wild Thing song is over, but I get this feeling that the Jon Moxley tweener lone wolf character, which kind of skews a little towards the babyface side, is starting to skew a little towards the heel side.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about Moxley. He's like to me, He's one of those Steve Austin, Randy Savage type guys to where he's a likable heel, but he can work babyface, work heel. I'm okay with tweeners. Like for me, like there's certain guys who can pull that off, and Moxley is just one of them. So him acting a little too heelish one day or a little too babyface-ish one day does not take me out of his character because that's just who he is. And quite frankly, I think if you go into the tier system of AEW, clearly, some would have him on the A list. I think he's one step below that one, just barely below that one, but I think he's the top of that list right now.
Well, the balloon is only so large, and now with all this top level talent coming in, everyone gets pushed down, and we've talked about that with the likes of Jungle Boy, and certainly Jon Moxley's not immune to that. But I think a pissed off, disgruntled, kind of heelish Jon Moxley who's pissed off because the CM Punks of the world are now here, that could be interesting. I think it all depends on what Punk wants to do, and I don't want to get too much into the Punk discussion, but there's always dream matches we can dream up. Moxley versus Punk. But if Punk's real desire here is to elevate young talent, Moxley doesn't need the rub. So, we'll see what happens with that. But for the moment, the match itself was fine. The post-match moment was good. It was well done. It wasn't hokey. It set up the match for Dynamite, which I'm really looking forward to. Overall, I gave the whole situation a B-.
B-. Personally, since I loved it, I was entertained by it. I thought it was not as good as the Miro Kingston match, but that's because until Punk came out, that was my favorite match of the night. Like I was like, okay, this is the bar. This is the bar you have to beat for the night. Like for the best match of the night, this is the bar. But yeah, I would give it a B+, because of the setup, because of the match itself. Good, hard hitting. Those guys really acted within themselves and brought out a sensational match. There was some stuff that I could have left, but for me, B+, loved it. Definitely.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, it was just a good match. Definitely was on the right spot of the card. Both the first two matches really set a tone, and I could honestly see if you were somebody who was like, I'm really just here for Punk, so I'm just gonna like drift out, maybe play my Xbox until I hear Punk on. I could see those two matches being the ones where it's like, you know what, I'm dialed in. Let's see what you got. I paid $50. Let's watch the whole card.
They're giving you a little bit of everything.
They are.
It's a buffet.
It is, and to your point, going into how they're doing little relationships with New Japan, with GCW, with Impact, really letting all these little these niche crowds know that, hey, there's something here for you. You're welcome here. We don't. What I think the message that they're giving is, it's like, look, we are everything. We're building this big thing that includes you, not excludes you. We're not better than you. We're just something that provides a bigger platform. I think that's the message that they're giving, if I'm making sense there.
It's an interesting approach in that, when you're talking about attracting an audience, and WWE's audience is everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're trying to attract, kids and their parents and people from the mainstream. They just announced this partnership where they're going to be making customized Major League Baseball plated championship belt replicas. Like they're getting involved in everything, right? And then on the other side, AEW, it feels like they're trying to consolidate, core groups of professional wrestling fans, which is interesting. It's an interesting approach. Eventually, they're going to have to expand out, and again, I think with the talent that they have, now would be the time to start a mass marketing campaign, and you put up these recognizable faces. I mean, you go into Times Square in New York City, and you put up a big poster, of Punk and Bryan Danielson, and then around them you put like a Darby Allin or a Jungle Boy. Like, if I'm walking through Times Square, I'm like, oh, I know those two.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and then you bring attention to your product. So it's a fascinating time. But hey, I think also real quick, now is a good time to let everybody know, because to make sure it's legit, I did before the event send you my predictions, since we didn't get an opportunity to do a prediction show. And I went 8-2 in my predictions here. I went 9-1 in my SummerSlam predictions. So overall, I'm 17-3.
You're
And I'm a big stats
17.
guy.
You are
17-3.
you are 17-3 in terms of all picks. So basically, next time I go gambling in Vegas on the wrestling odds, I'm just gonna put money on whatever you want. So we had a great question in the chat here right now.
Ooh, okay, here we go.
Okay, Seductive Steel says, okay, I don't know if you guys explained this before, but what do you mean by babyface? So that's an excellent question. So in most wrestling matches, you have what's called the babyface, which is the good guy, or you have the heel, which is the bad guy. And then when we say something like a tweener, it's somebody in between a babyface and a heel, somebody who is cheered but they act like a heel, or maybe somebody who's booed but they act like a total babyface, like something like that, right? Where they are the good guy but they're hated, or they're the bad guy but they're loved type of situation. Traditionally, heel means bad guy, babyface means good guy.
So I'm gonna somewhat date myself with these references, but babyface is like John McClane in Die Hard.
Yep.
Heel is Hans Gruber in Die Hard.
Very much so.
And tweener is the Michael Douglas character in Falling Down.
Yes. All right, that is, I cannot, I hope that answers your question, Seductive Steel. There you go. All right, he got it. He gave us the thumbs up in the chat. Okay, and moving on to the next match, which I loved a lot too, actually. I thought it was a great match. Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, versus Chris Statlander. My apologies. Thought it was a good, hard-hitting match. Loved it. It was so good, it got Orange Cassidy to say some words on the outside of the ring.
With a heavily emoting Orange Cassidy, which was like, what the?
Dude, this match got Orange Cassidy to emote as opposed, like the dude can't even give a full thumbs up. His thumbs up is like this. So he got a full emote. You know, for me, definitely wasn't close to match of the night, but it definitely wasn't something that made me not want to, you know, it definitely didn't make me regret spending my $50. There was nothing in the match that made me go, oh, this is stupid, or made me drift off. It was just one of those matches I think did exactly what it needed to do. Both put in some great effort. They got some good pops from the crowd. I think you got to, Dr. Britt Baker needs to stay champ for a while because she's the most dominant woman in that company. She's the best on the mic, arguably the best in the ring right now. I hope she gets to keep the title for a very long time. Steve, I'll leave it to you. How'd you feel about this match?
It was better than it had any right to be.
Yep.
And that's the best compliment I can give it. So I'll say it was a B+.
B+? Dude, this is a first of the night. You gave this one a higher grade than I did.
Oh.
I actually gave it a B-, but
Okay.
but it did what it needed to do. It got some pops. I just felt like it needed a little more, but you know, it definitely was not a bad match. B- here, you know, people forget because we haven't graded in a while. We are very tough graders. So a B, if you're anywhere from the C+ up, it was a great match. It was great by other standards.
C is average.
C is average. C is average. Anything above that is better. All right, so moving on. Oh,
Here we go.
Oh, God. You know what? I will preface it by saying this. I liked 80% of this match. And then they got way too unrealistic and way too cartoony with it. I am, of course, talking about the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers in a steel cage match that was supposedly designed so that nothing and no one could get in or interfere, and it was Texas Tornado rules, meaning that both pairs were fighting at the same time. You know, Steve, I know this is where we're gonna probably disagree on a lot of, this is gonna be the one we disagree on a little bit, but just follow my logic here. From the opening match up until that stupid little fucking boot with the thumbtacks got thrown in, I actually was like, holy crap, this is a good match. You know, granted, I thought it was a pretty good match. They used the cage logically at places. Yeah, it was a little choreographed, but you know what to expect with that. With what we were given, I was all for that. But then I'm the type of guy who likes near falls. But I don't like near falls after you basically just conducted, attempted murder, and the guy manages.
You mean a super Canadian destroyer off the top rope that gets a 2 count? Yeah.
Yeah, the super Canadian destroyer that gets a 2 count, the cross body from the high up cage. And let me ask this question. If the whole purpose is no one and nothing gets in, no one and nothing gets out, why not put a fucking roof on the cage?
Because then it would be War Games or Blood and Guts. I'm sorry, that's what they call it, Blood and Guts.
Oh my god. So anyways, up until a point, I liked it. And I'm a Lucha Brothers fan. Like, I love the Lucha Brothers. They're great performers. They're a great tag team. I am actually happy that they got the titles put on them because they're such great workers.
Genuinely surprised me. This was one of the two I got wrong. That genuinely surprised me that they did the title change.
Yeah, I know you were like all the EVPs were going to hang on to the titles. And this one, though, I will say what this match did, it did cast a little bit of doubt for me in the main event, where part of me was just thinking, and I even told you this in the Facebook chat that we were having, I was like, are they gonna just use this as an opportunity to drop the belts, go away for a little bit, let the new ground get established, and then come back to be the thorns in the sides of the new talent that's coming in? That was the angle I thought they were going to play, because these guys have been pretty prominent for a while. But them actually losing the belt made the main event way less predictable for me, I should say. So it did that. Honestly, for me, even though I didn't like a lot of the glitches in the match, it didn't do enough for me to just tank it. It wasn't an F. It wasn't a D for me. I thought it was a great match up until I did not like the thumbtack boot. And for me personally, I'm like, when you're dealing with that level of talent, you don't need to do shit like that. Those guys are way above gimmicks like that or stuff like that, in my opinion. Because of how talented both teams are. I know we give the Young Bucks a little crap, but they do have talent. Like, that's not to be denied. So yeah, what were your thoughts on this match? I'm dying to hear your thoughts.
Well, so I had to go back and rewatch it.
Okay.
So in real time, I had a visceral reaction to what I was seeing. And then as it's going on, I'm reading some of the instant reactions and the reviews, and I'm seeing things like match of the year. And I'm like, we had to have been watching two different things.
Yeah, I think, they use the term polarizing figures. I think if we can be honest, the now former tag team champions of AEW, the Young Bucks, are very polarizing, whereas people either think they're the most underrated tag team of all times. These guys are great. I watch AEW. They are the best tag team. They're better than the New Day. They're better than this tag team, that tag team, the Usos. They're the best, right? There's that camp. And then there's other camps who are just like, nah, bro. And, go ahead, though. I want to hear the rest of your thoughts.
Well, so as I go back and I rewatch it, I still didn't like the totality of it. I thought everyone worked really hard, obviously.
Yeah.
But there's things when it comes to Young Bucks matches, there's just things about their matches and the way that they construct their matches that are just so hard to take. And it has nothing to do with the athleticism, and it has everything to do with the illogical, corny, convoluted bullshit that they do.
Yeah.
So, hey, I will say this though. The Lucha Brothers entrance, how great was that?
That was a great entrance.
That was awesome.
It was a very, very awesome entrance. I loved their entrance. Like I said, I loved 80% of the match. It was a really good match. I just didn't like it when it got illogical. And for me, illogical is like once you've committed attempted murder in the ring, but they're still going, the heavy near falls. Like
Well,
the overdoing of the near falls after, like you said, the Canadian Death Destroyer, and then that gets a 2 count.
well, there's illogical, and then there's just stupid,
Yeah.
right? So like illogical. So for me, illogical in this match was the stuff like at the beginning they did like the do-si-do where they switch places and then do-si-do again. Like that's corny, but it's like whatever.
Yeah.
um, a lot of in stereo stuff, a lot of stuff that is clearly choreographed. The spots where the Lucha Brothers were doing the spears on each side of the cage through the
Yeah.
ropes, and then both Young Bucks moved out of the way at the same time.
Yep.
It's stuff like that that just looks overly choreographed. And then the spot where they were doing progressively more complex diamond cutters.
Yeah.
So it's like you start with a regular diamond cutter, then you're doing an over the top diamond cutter,
Yep.
then he does a diamond cutter on both of them at the same time. It's like,
Yeah.
why? Um, so then you get to the shoe, right? So Cutler throws by the way, great throw by Cutler.
Oh, that was an amazing throw. Like, because if you go too strong or too weak on that one, and you accidentally hit that front row, somebody in the front row gets a special souvenir. That could have gone bad very quickly, but I give him props. That was a good throw. And then how high was that cage? Like 20 feet?
It looked like about that, right?
It looked about 20 feet in the air, yeah.
So he pulls out the shoe, and right away I'm like, oh, here we go. Like, why? This is the match itself was fine. I mean, like I said, I'm not a fan of the overly choreographed stuff, but it was fine for what it was up until that point. It wasn't the most hard to take Young Bucks match I've ever seen, but then he pulls out the shoe. The crowd kind of pops for it a little bit. They give him the "You sick fuck" chant.
Yeah.
They use the shoe. Phoenix does his comeback. And then at that point, the match just gets full on stupid. And it was the moment when it was Ray Phoenix jumped up on the cage, and then one of the other Bucks jumped up on the cage with him, and they were kind of like swatting at each other.
Yeah.
I guess they were supposed to be punching.
Yeah.
And then they both fall between the ropes and the cage. But it was Penta and I think Matt Jackson that were getting ready to do package pile drivers on each other, while staring at each other and playing to the crowd.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking to myself, like, we're a tag team, right?
Yep.
And you're getting ready to package pile driver somebody, and someone's getting ready to package pile driver me, and instead of coming to save my ass, you decide not only am I gonna not save your ass, but I'm gonna basically high five the guy who's package pile drivering.
Yes, absolutely.
In this World Tag Team title match, it's like, why? And then it gets even worse, because then they do the Super Canadian Destroyer spot, gets a 2 count.
Yep.
It looked vicious. That should have ended the match.
Dude, I was legitimately like, is Matt okay? Which Jackson took it? Was it Nick or Matt?
I believe it was Matt.
Yeah, Matt. I was like, is this dude okay? Like, because, you never can really, when it's that fast, you can't see where the head is placed in the thighs with that. But I was like, at the very least, he should have been out of the match at that point. Like, he should have been.
But he's up on his feet 45 seconds later.
Exactly. That's 100%.
Not to skip ahead to the end, but during the end of the show, when Jurassic Express came in,
yep,
Luchasaurus got hit with 2 shitty-looking belt shots from Kenny Omega and 4 stomps from the Young Bucks, and he played dead for 6 minutes.
Yes, he did.
He didn't move. He looked like he was shot.
Yes.
And here, Matt Jackson takes a Super Canadian Destroyer. He's up in 45 seconds. Then they do that spot where they're all standing in a circle, and they're taking turns super kicking each other in a circle.
Yep.
And then there's one man left standing at the end of that. Then they kick up. They do another set of super kicks to each other in a circle. And at that point, I'm just like, just get to the end already. So then they do the spot where it was, I think it was Phoenix did the splash off the top
off the cage. Yep.
And then they immediately go into the tandem pile driver combo move. I don't remember what they call it, but that drop pile driver.
It's a sick looking finish, yeah.
Yeah, but compared to the Super Canadian Destroyer, it wasn't.
No, it was not.
And so we get the new AEW World Tag Team Champions. just too many spots that were just overly convoluted. I don't know why the Bucks feel this need to do these overly complex spots that are just like, not to keep getting into it, but the one they did where it was like a modified Samoan drop to which another Jackson did a 450 splash, and then
Yeah.
immediately the other Jackson comes and does the moonsault, and it's like, why?
Yeah.
And it never gets a 3 count.
No, it does
And
not, and it's overdone. Yeah. No, I see what you mean, and plus your style of things, you want it logical, as though, hey, this is a legitimate combat like sport, or it's like this is a legitimate contest. What would you do in this particular situation, right?
well, and as we're gonna see later on in the show, you can get a lot of mileage out of a freaking headlock
And a hammerlock.
and a hammer.
Oh, that
Right?
hammerlock was a thing of beauty, but we'll get into that. All right, so I'm gonna give my letter grade for this because
Right.
they put in good work, because they did try hard. It was entertaining for at points. I give it a C plus. What do you give it?
So surprisingly, here's the thing, right? I don't like the way they set up their matches. I think they are a heavily overrated team.
Yep.
The match of the year stuff is just eye rolling. However, with that said, the first, you said 80%, I'll go with that,
Yeah.
of the match was not totally offensive. They were clearly working hard.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they actually did the job,
Yeah.
I actually graded it as a B minus.
Dude, I think that's a fair grade. That's 100% fair. C plus to B minus, because giving you credit, giving them credit, like what I said earlier, because they dropped the titles and did the job, it made me think, oh shit, maybe Omega does the job. Because my theory, and we talked about this on the Facebook chat in real time, I was like, well, what if they decide to just go away? Which clearly didn't happen, but what if they decide to just lose and go away, and then the Empire strikes back? But nope, more of the same from there.
Just the opposite.
All right, next up we had the Casino Battle Royale with in the women's division. Personally, on this one, I was drifting in and out of attention on this because I had other stuff going on. It was nothing wrong with the work that was being done in the ring. I actually thought the spots I caught were awesome. My one qualm with this is I'm glad that Ruby Soho is in AEW. I think she's going to be a great addition to that roster. I think it's a great addition to the women's division. However, I am of the mindset that Thunder Rosa deserved that win. And that was my biggest qualm with the match. Because let's be honest, Royal Rumble, Battle Royale, whatever, over the top rope type matches, they're just very tough to pull off. You got a bunch of moving pieces here or there. I'm always very forgiving because in retrospect, it's just a giant brawl where people are just coming up with cool spots on the fly. But my biggest problem, and probably my only problem with this, was Thunder Rosa, not winning, and Thunder Rosa, Ruby Soho didn't actually need to be a part of this match. I think she's at one of those spots where she could have came in and had like a CM Punk style storyline where she could have just worked with somebody conventionally. I think her spot with how they're positioning her was kind of above this opportunity, whereas a Thunder Rosa who worked her way up, who's a fan favorite, who is without argument. I mean, okay, let me ask you this. If Thunder Rosa won last night, would you have been offended?
I would have thought it was I would have thought it was the wrong move.
For Thunder Rosa to win it?
Yeah.
All right, what's your opinion on it?
They need to freshen up the women's title picture, and Thunder Rosa has been and around it. I wish I could say that I was some kind of Nostradamus by predicting that Ruby Soho would be the Joker and that she would win the thing, but that was the predominant, opinion of most of the internet wrestling community. I'll say this. First of all, the match placement was ideal. Like right off the steel cage match, and before we get into the stuff coming up, I thought this was the right place for it. But the format doesn't work, and The more of the casino battle royal format that I see, the less I like it.
Yeah.
And obviously they're doing their version of the Royal Rumble, but the Royal Rumble works because it's one at a time. It's
Mm-hmm.
spaced out at regular intervals. Everyone usually has their moment. And here, they do the card soup thing, but when the like for spades comes in, and you get five people coming in at once, no one has a moment to digest what's going on. No one has their moment. You might have one person from each suit that has their moment. But I actually thought that Ruby Soho, the former Ruby Riot, as good old JR called her on the broadcast, um, I, you know, I understand why you feel the way you do about Thunder Rosa. I'm of the opinion, just based on the fact that they had to go to Chris Statlander for a women's title match on this pay-per-view, that they need to freshen up the women's division. And you can make the argument that Ruby Soho is a star coming in, but here's the deal. For all the times that they change around the two women's championships in WWE, Nikki Ash, right?
Yeah.
Ruby Riott never won the women's title.
She never won
She
it.
No, she never won the women's title. So they never even, and the Riot Squad that she was, that faction that she had, they never won the tag team titles as far as I remember. So, she's not as big of a name as one might be led to believe.
Yeah.
But she is a new, fresh face. I
Mm-hmm.
like Ruby Riott, Ruby Soho. I think she can work, and I think that she needed this to kind of give Britt Baker somebody legitimate to work with as they kind of rebuild the middle and upper tiers of their women's division. So I didn't have a problem with this, with her winning it. If Thunder Rosa had won it, fine. But eventually you're gonna burn through Thunder Rosa, and then where do you go? So
That's true.
it's the same. It's the same argument I made about Bianca Belair at SummerSlam. It's like she's run out of people to work with. Now's the time for her to drop the title, and I don't want to see Britt Baker drop the title because I think she's the best thing in the women's division going on over there. But overall, I thought it did what it needed to do. It wasn't special. It wasn't terrible. It was a C.
See? Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it's a C as well. Definitely was a C. Didn't pull me out of it. They had some cool spots, and then this, to your credit, the Casino Battle Royale format. It's not like the Royal Rumble because when you look at the Royal Rumble, it's once a year. There's a clear objective. There's a lot of spacing, and there's a lot of time that gets allotted to it because it's the main event. This is it. The winner of the match gets to go and compete at WrestleMania in the main event. So
we need some fresh ideas, and part of the problem with professional wrestling is they take things that work and then they try to tweak them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we've had issues with heel authority figures for 25 years. That's why eventually you got to a point in TNA where they had multiple, contract briefcases at once.
Yep.
And even WWE is doing that now because now you got to have a men's and a women's Royal Rumble. You got to have a men's and a women's Money in the Bank. And it's like it eventually too much of a good thing becomes bad.
I'm inclined to agree with you. Okay, so speaking of too much of a good thing becoming bad, we go to our next match. This is, I know, going to be your favorite one of the night. This is probably the guy who should be the premier heel of AEW, MJF, versus Chris Jericho for not the first, not the second, not the third, but the fourth time, with the stipulation being, if Chris Jericho loses, he retires. If he wins, he's 3-1 against MJF. So, how'd you feel about this match? Because I rambled on about the last one first last time. I want to get your input first this time. How'd you feel about MJF versus Chris Jericho?
Fuck this match and fuck Chris Jericho.
All right, could we elaborate there, good sir?
So, what was the point of all this? So we're at a point now. It's been 18 months of MJF and Chris Jericho. This feud has failed in every single way I can think of. MJF rarely wrestles these days. We're subjected to Chris Jericho matches week after week during the labors, and MJF, I don't think he's been submitted. I think he was pinned in a Moxley title match maybe a year or so ago.
Yep.
He hasn't been pinned or submitted in well over a year, and he not only loses, he taps out to Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
The visual of MJF pinning Jericho, following him doing his version of the Judas elbow, and Jericho having his foot on the ropes, I think they think it's designed to protect MJF. It didn't.
Yeah.
It did not. And whatever they have planned for MJF to get his heat back and send Chris Jericho off to tour with Fozzy or go on his cruise or whatever he's going to do. And by the way, I do plan on going on a Jericho cruise one day, but that's aside.
I do want to go on a Jericho cruise as well.
I like Chris Jericho. This Chris Jericho that's been fucking MJF, I don't like. But anyway, I hated the finish. It basically just made the last 18 months complete and total bullshit and a waste of time. And MJF, in my opinion, is now the WWE Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt could talk, and he never won shit.
Yep.
Until he became the Fiend. But I'm talking about cult leader Bray Wyatt, the original version.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean.
Never wins. You have this 25-year-old, whatever he is, premier heel, this generational heel talent who has a good look, he can talk, he can wrestle, and they sacrifice it all so that they can stroke Jericho off, which is wrong on every level. It's one of the examples that it just causes me to roll my eyes when I hear about the high hopes of this great talent that's coming in, and we're gonna change the narrative because I get to watch this. So fuck all of this. They better have I tell you this much, they better have a damn good plan for MJF at this point. And in my opinion, the only way that they could possibly salvage this, and this is what I would probably do, and then I'll turn it over to you. The only way that they could possibly salvage this is if this Wednesday, Jericho comes out and MJF comes out and damn near cripples him. Like, I'm talking like you make it uncomfortable to watch, which they have no problem doing.
Are you
right?
Are you talking Lashley versus Kingston style?
No, I'm talking like the uncomfortable cringing when you saw Nick Gage cutting into Chris Jericho's head with a sawed-off freaking light tube.
You want that
I'm
uncomfortable?
Well, what else are you gonna do? How does MJF recover from this? Because you never remember who wins 3 out of 4. Who won the last one? Bryan Danielson, won WrestleMania 30. Does anyone really remember that he lost all those matches in screwjob fashion to Randy Orton and Triple H leading up to that? No, you just remember the visual of him, submitting Batista and standing on the table with the confetti and stuff like that. So Jericho gets the last win, and now MJF is supposed to be okay after this? So, like I said, what I would do, you have MJF come out, and damn near cripple Jericho. It lets Jericho go off and tour with Fozzy. It keeps him off TV for a while, and then because he won, you can always bring him back at some point in the future and make it uncomfortable, get his heat back, and then you have MJF cut a promo that says, I've been too cute about this shit, and now I'm about to start running through motherfuckers. And then you start sacrificing people to MJF because there's no possible way to recover MJF from this. In my opinion, I don't see how. He just got tapped out by a 51-year-old man.
True. After hitting him,
he's all mouth and no substance.
You know what? Before I give my opinion, Seductive Steel asked, okay, so he loses and retires. What is stopping him from going to WWE or on one of the other platforms? So basically what this match was Chris Jericho would retire as a wrestler, but he would stay on color commentary. So he would be a commentator. That was the key stipulation of the match. Personally,
has there ever been a retirement stipulation that has been kept?
Never. But the thing was, I felt if MJF would have retired Jericho, it would have taken his career, it would have skyrocketed him as a legitimate freaking force as a heel. The way they ended it, I could totally see what you were saying there. There's a spot in the match where Jericho, he doesn't hit flat on the canvas, he hit the corner, which makes you think the corner of the ring on his back, and he's holding his lower back for the rest of the match. And MJF, he could have really been hurt, but he was selling it like he was really hurt. So I think they mixed that in with the false count, thinking that they were going to protect MJF. But to your point, he should have won this match. This match shouldn't have happened if we're being 100% honest here.
Well, I agree with you. What if they had just ended it with his foot on the ropes, right? And then you could have Jericho just have this like campaign where he's like showing the picture, like I had my foot on the rope, but MJF still won. And then there's so many different ways they could have done this, but they had Jericho tap him out
with the walls of Jericho.
Cut his balls out. Like, why would I take MJF seriously right now? Like, I was already remarking during the labors that he was plotting like a 60s Batman villain.
Yep.
Now he's about as effective as one. So, there's people that are talking like, oh, he's going to be great with CM Punk. Well, yeah, I would love to see them cutting promos on each other, but do I think he's going to be a threat to CM Punk? He's barely a threat to 51-year-old Chris Jericho. He's a joke. And he's got to figure out some way to get his heat back.
Yeah, I do agree. He needs his heat back. I think you got to go one of two ways here. Either you really sell the whole 3-in-1 thing, you sell it as a fluke, you move on, you let his mouth save him, and you get him as far away from Chris Jericho as possible, spare us, and you could still do your idea where you just feed him some guys. Just let him destroy some guys to get his heat back. In a rage against Jericho, really like maybe this could be the loss that really snaps him into being like, less cerebral and more violent about everything.
But he really needs to get that heat back from Jericho. Jericho just doused him with cold water.
Yeah, I mean, I personally just think you gotta just get those two away from each other now.
I agree. I totally agree, but
he's going to have to earn his heat back slow and steady elsewhere. But, dude, I'm so tired of Jericho versus MJF.
So then if you go by what you just said,
yep,
he has to now slowly get his heat back. Then what was the point of the last 18 months?
Oh, dude, you're preaching to the choir there. It was total bullshit. He needs to
go out there and wrap a frickin' crutch around his neck and damn near cripple him to get his heat back from Jericho, send Jericho off, and then he needs to cut the promo. I'm done playing games. I'm done with this kiddie bullshit. I'm coming for everybody, and then just have him just start mowing through people. But that's not going to happen. They're going to have him disappear, or they're going to have him come out, and he's going to continue doing the cutesy bullshit with his scarf and frickin' Wardlow, and he's going to continue cutting great promos, and he's going to continue winning diddly shit, and he's going to continue to get damaged. He's 25. He can still recover from this, but this is bad.
Okay, so I take it you're going to give this one an F.
This was an F.
This was an F for you. Me, I thought C-. Match itself, the work was good. Like, here's what you and I were saying. We're like, if this was the only match they had, that's what I was trying to be fair with, right? Judging the match itself. If this was the only match that they had, it was actually a pretty good match. But if you take the whole collective body of work around it with the storyline, what they're doing with MJF, I have to agree with you on the F, but I can't bring myself to do it because the guys did give a good match. So I'd give it a C-.
Yeah, I mean, the MJF's 3-1 against them. The three wins were all bullshit. One was in a cinematic match. The other was in blood and guts. When he threw him off the cage.
Yep.
And the other one was in the fifth labor match. I mean, like, none of those wins meant anything. This win was the one that mattered.
Because it was a straight up mano-y-mano 1v1 match, yeah.
And it was clean. There was no ambiguity there. He beat him flat. And not only did he beat him flat, he submitted him. He tapped him out.
Yep.
So basically what they told me is MJF is a piece of shit. He's a pussy. Okay, got it. He's all talk and nothing else.
Damn.
Got it.
All right, now Steven is speaking very ironically there. We're both MJF fans. I think
I love MJF.
You're heated because of how they treated him. Yeah, because of how they treated him, that's where the heat is coming from with this. And then basically you're saying with how they treated him, with how they booked him, this is what you view this character as at this moment.
Well, and I'm heated about it because this extends beyond MJF. This is my fear about AEW in general, because the Young Bucks do this bullshit too, where it's like, oh, we'll elevate you, by it'll look like it'll look strong because we have to give you 2 finishes instead of 1. You're still pinning the guy clean in the middle of the ring. The fact that MJF got the visual pin on Jericho means nothing.
Yeah.
He got tapped out.
Yes, he did. All right. So
wrong on so many.
Let's move on to happier pastures. This match was my favorite match of the night. Now we're in the happy place now because I actually liked the rest of the card. Oh, yep, Steven's rubbing his nipples.
Oh, yeah.
Steve's all about this one.
Ooh.
We had CM Punk versus Darby Allin, and I read a comment on the YouTube page, and you know what? I agreed with it wholeheartedly, which was, isn't it great in a wrestling match to see actual wrestling holds?
Crazy.
To see a headlock, to see a rear naked choke, an abdominal stretch, freaking hammerlock, and actually believe that these guys are actually trying to inflict damage on one another.
Wait a minute, you're trying to say that there weren't that many wrestling holds in the tag team steel cage match that all these fanboys were collectively orgasming about?
No, I did not see too many wrestling holds in that match. I saw a
lot
lot
of Super Canadian Destroyer, which apparently doesn't mean shit, but anyway.
Yeah, so this match, from open to close, I loved every minute of it. Starting with the entrance, I love that visual of Sting gives him a pound, then Sting gives him a hug, and they're like, hey, I believe in you, kid. Like, hey, I've been mentoring you. This is your moment. This is your shot. Darby Allin with his skateboard, which is half CM Punk, half a skeleton. That was so cool. Like, I bet that thing sold like fucking hotcakes the next day. Skateboards down to the ring. Very ominous. The look on his face is just, I know I'm in for the fight of my life. Sits in his corner, waits ominously. Loved it. Punk comes out. And, you and I had that discussion about, first off, he comes out and I think he looked great. Like, he looked trim.
Fantastic.
He looked fantastic. He looked in shape. He definitely took this match seriously. And this is CM Punk in tights, the 3-star tights. I like the look. I thought it was a good look for him. He looked great in the ring. I think it suits him a lot better.
It was actually, I don't know if you read any of the internet comments, it was actually a little divisive, and I didn't understand why. I thought, everyone's got to always upgrade their look. I thought if he had come out in the trunks with the 3 stars on the ass, like, it would have been like, okay, like, fine. But I actually kind of liked the look.
I did like the look, and plus, man, you're a men's physique competitor. I'm a classic physique competitor. What I tell people is, if you don't got the legs, don't show the legs. So.
Well, and I kind of got a sense that there might have been a little of that too, but that's okay.
You know what, man? Here's the deal. He's 100% straight edge, 100% natural. The guy's never drank a beer, let alone take a steroid. He looked in fantastic shape.
Chris Jericho called him CM drunk one time in a program heading into WrestleMania 29. You don't remember that?
I do remember that, but I also, it's also Chris Jericho. So
that was back when Jericho had parental supervision stopping him from doing stupid shit.
Yeah, kind of. Well, you know what? We're gonna forget that because we're on happy times now. We're on happy times now. We're not talking about happy. We're bringing it back, baby. All right. So the entrances were good. And goddamn, when would you ever think you would hear a pop that crazy of 2 guys sitting down looking at each other? So Darby Allin sitting in the corner just looking at him, not taking his eyes off him, very ominous. Punk comes out, sits, just does the classic, sitting where he sits down cross-legged, looking at each other. They both stand up, and it's a nice, slow build. They do some crazy stuff in that match, but they don't just go straight to that. There's a feeling out portion. Like, I wasn't just watching a wrestling match. I was watching a story unfold, and that story was, damn, do I still got it? Like, because first they do that first tie-up, and Darby Allin, he's significantly smaller, but he's significantly faster and more agile, gets that slick freaking arm drag on Punk. Punk gives that great look on his face like, oh, okay. Then they both exchange bumps. They do some old school classic stuff. They work their way into some crazy shit. Punk hits the greatest counter to the coffin drop I've ever seen, where he just sits straight up and lets him fall on his back. Hits 2 go to sleeps. Some amazing counters. I think this match was proof to the young guys in the back, or proof in general, that yeah, you can hit that crazy top rope stuff, but you could also do it in a way that's very logical to the match that doesn't insult people's intelligence. I felt that the match told a great story, which was, a lot of stories ask a question, and the question of this one was, does CM Punk still have it? And according to the crowd, Mr. CM Punk, you still got it. You still got it. Yep. Yeah. Punk still has it, man. That and then some. And dude, how good were those chokes? How good were those locks that he was hitting? And not just hitting them, but hitting them like he was actually trying to do something with them, not just catching his breath. And he ends the match. Darby Allin, he beats Darby Allin with a go to sleep off of a sick counter. Loved it. Pins him. Sting walks up, shakes his hand. They both try to help Darby up. Darby's like, no, I'm going to get myself up. I'm going to pick myself up. I love that little take they did on it. It almost brought a tear to my eye almost, man. I love that moment. Like, I was almost that fan in Chicago because I was like, damn it, kid, you just elevated yourself. You just had a great match. You picked yourself up. You fell down, but you picked yourself up. You shook his hand like a man. You took your bumps, you walked away, and then Punk celebrated. Look at the goosebumps, bro. Goosebumps. Oh, yeah. I loved every fucking second of that match. As I recounted, I'm like, I thought it was the perfect match. Anybody who thought another match was the match of the year, no. And here's the thing. Did it not seem like the crowd was just in awe in the beginning? Because it was almost like, damn, this is the first time we've seen like a legitimate old school logical wrestling match in front of us, and they loved it. So I'm just gonna say A+, and I'm giving it to you, sir.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had it as an A+, and I think that, what else can you say except go out of your way to see it? And it's not because it was a spot fest, and it's not because the work rate was through the roof. It's because exactly what you just said. It was a old school professional wrestling match and an old school professional wrestling story, and a story that's just beyond professional wrestling. The young guard stepping up to challenge the old veteran, the old guard. Like we see it in professional sports all the time. And Punk looked good. His stuff looked good. The match was laid out in a way that allowed Punk to kind of take his time. Like, there was crazy stuff going on, but you'll notice none of it was done by Punk. It was all Darby Allin working around Punk, but Punk kind of controlling the pace a little bit. He never looked blew up.
Yep.
Like, he looked like he was in control the whole time. The counters were creative. As a matter of fact, I had a thought watching the first couple minutes of this. It reminded me of the, if you remember, and we talked about this on a previous episode, but there was that Bret Hart 1-2-3 Kid match for the WWF title on Raw.
Oh my God,
yes. The first couple minutes of this kind of reminded me of that, because the Bret Hart role now being played by CM Punk, the grounded mat technician, and this young upstart high flyer, doing all these weird pinning predicaments to try and get one over on him. A nice little attitude from Darby when he was going for the coffin drop, and he does the go to sleep.
Yeah, to get Punk back, like, hey, you
got a pop from the crowd, like a boo from the crowd, but got a reaction. And then just the little sit up, so simple.
Yep.
It's so simple.
So simple, but so beautiful at the same time.
You don't need to do the reverse Samoan drop into the 450 splash into the springboard, senton bomb. Sometimes it's just a hammerlock and a sit up.
Dude.
And the match was fantastic, and the crowd, that crowd was into it.
They were. They were very
Doesn't
much
mean that
into it.
they're always going to be able to do that, but this is what CM Punk came back to do, to not just to elevate Darby Allin, but to show that locker room, you don't have to do 500-mile-an-hour spot after spot after spot after spot, because first of all, you're draining the crowd, and second of all, your body's only going to be able to take that for so long.
Exactly, 100%.
You know, this, I hope everyone watched this. Like I said, the best compliment I can give it is if you haven't seen it, go out of your way to see it. It's not the greatest match of all time, but it was the greatest match on this show, and it wasn't even close. A plus.
A plus, 100% agree. And you said Bret Hart 1-2-3 Kid. I agreed. That was the first spot of the match, but then I also put it with Hogan versus Rock at WrestleMania. It kind of felt like both of those kind of spliced together. At least the opening, basically how they both felt out the crowd. They milked it because Hogan had been away for so long, and now they finally get to see him WrestleMania mano a mano. No NWO backing him, just pure Hulk Hogan. They both took turns playing with the crowd. I felt like there was a lot of posturing up front. Then they slowly built into it, and then it spliced into that Bret Hart 1-2-3 Kid. But I agree with you wholeheartedly there.
And there was a vocal contingent that was pro Darby Allin, and I think that, you know, the last thing I'll say about this, AEW also controlled themselves from getting into some of their tropes. There was no jump start before the bell. There was, you know, they resisted the urge to have somebody jump in, you know, do a run in, you know, because they think they're going to give rubs to their heels. And thank God I didn't see 2.0 again. Holy shit.
Oh God, I'm sincerely glad it was just clean match, no shenanigans, GTS.
And they resisted the urge to do something weird at the end with, you know, Darby smacking Punk or something like that when he went for his hand. They kept it simple. It's a time-honored story. The match was solid. Everything start to finish here was just, this was, especially coming off the abortion of MJF and Jericho, this renewed my faith.
Renewed your faith. All right, awesome. Well, you know what, Steve? You know what would renew my faith? I know we have a lot of viewers watching on the Twitch channel right now. If you are not following already, please hit that follow button. And also, as you ask us questions in the chat, we will organically answer them. So please go ahead. That also adds a little bit to the crowd. Follow us here on Twitch. Subscribe to us on YouTube. But moving into the next match, personally, I always loved Paul White. I liked him as the Giant in WCW. I loved him as the Big Show in WWF, WWE. This was what we all knew it was going to be. It was going to be a squash match against QT Marshall, who I'm sure is a good human being, but, you know, he's a heel with no real heat. Like, he's not a guy who I wanted to see get his ass beat. It was one of those things where, for me, it felt like, okay, we just gave the match of the night. Before we put the main event out there, we got to put something here as filler to get the crowd, you know, get their minds off of what they just saw. That's what this was. Paul White hit the choke slam. I loved it. It did exactly what it needed to do. I'm not going to go into deep criticism here because I think this whole thing was put on the card for this purpose in general, and it did its job. C+ for me. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I had it as a C-. I think it was in the right spot. I totally agree with you. Here's my only criticism of this, and it's not a criticism of the match. This match is the epitome of the problem that they're about to have. Because for whatever reason, they love putting QT Marshall and Kamaroto and all these other freaking nozzles on TV. I know QT does something with the booking committee, or he's friends with the vice presidents. I don't know, but he's a joke. Him and the factory are jokes. They need to go away. You know, you have this star in white who, in my opinion, probably shouldn't wrestle. Yeah. He's 49 years old.
Yeah.
He's had his hip replaced. Like, they kept it simple, which was fine. But again, you have these stars coming in. And then for all these stars that you have in there and all this young talent you want to elevate, you've got QT Marshall, and you've got, you know, Private Party and the Hardy office, and just they gotta get there, and I know you're gonna hate me for saying this, but Orange Cassidy as well. So
No,
they
no,
gotta.
no, 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 no. If Orange Cassidy goes, I go. That's how it works.
So
I
so
finish.
they have to figure out their hierarchy, and you mentioned it before, like the A tier, B tier, C tier. They gotta do a recalibration right
Yeah,
now, and like I said, then they need to start being judicious and strategic with where they allot television time. If you want QT Marshall and those guys on dark,
fine.
free internet, fine. There's room for that, and then you have kind of like your minor, not that they have a minor league, but then you have a breeding ground for some of their even younger and greener
Yep.
talent. But I don't need to see QT Marshall involved in anything for a while, and that's the last I'll say on this.
I would agree with you. So C plus for me, C minus for you.
C minus.
Let's just move on to the main event, which I here's the thing. I thought Christian and Omega, I thought they put on a pretty good match. All things considered, I liked a lot of the spots that they hit. You know what, dude? I understand that we've had our criticisms of Mr. Kenny Omega for some of the spots, some of the booking, maybe a title run that's been a little bit longer than what it should be. But what I will say is it was a great match. The Young Bucks actually put on the Young Bucks dropping the title actually put me on my heels a little bit, like, hey, maybe he might go away, which is what I said before. Some of the spots that both those guys hit were great. That gash on Christian's side, I was like, oh my God, I hope this dude's okay.
That was gnarly.
That was a
It looked like he might have cracked a rib. He was spitting up blood. Like, that wasn't good. That wasn't a good spot. That was a needless risk.
That was a very much a needless risk.
And they got to do a better job at gimmicking their tables, because if I were Christian, I'd be pissed right now.
Oh yeah, 100% I'd be pissed right now. I'm sure he is pissed. I'm sure somebody got an earful, but end of the day, he got that main event spot. Let's be honest, like Christian got a spot where if he went to WWE, back to WWE, he wouldn't have gotten that spot. So he was in the main event. He got a title fight. He pinned, they respect him in that organization because he pinned Omega clean, 2 weeks ago to get the Impact title off of Omega. So, it's very clear that he's at the very least respected in that locker room and respected in AEW. The match itself, they put in good work. I thought the ending finisher was an unnecessary risk, but it was a very cool high spot though. For me, I know you're probably not going to agree with this, but then do we package this match with what happened after, or what happened after was its own thing?
I think it needs to be separate.
Okay.
I think it needs to be
if
separate.
It's its own separate thing, I got to give this match a B. It's a B for me because it didn't do anything that I wasn't expecting, and I was thoroughly entertained. And because of what the Young Bucks did, there was actually moments where my belief was suspended, and I thought that Christian could actually win. So, B for me.
Yeah. So this was my lock of the night. Omega winning. That didn't change when the Lucha Brothers won. I never had a doubt in my mind that Omega was winning this, and honestly, I didn't like this match as much as I liked their Rampage match, and I think the reason for that is the Rampage match was fresh. It was the first time they had wrestled, and we had just seen this 2 weeks ago. So, much like everything else involving the Elite, this was overbooked. The Good Brothers coming in and interfering, the table, Don Callis in the ring, like approaching Cage, and then the other moment when Callis was distracting the referee for what looked like about 45 solid seconds.
Yeah.
While I think it was Carl Anderson jumped up on the I don't know. Again, it's things like this that just it's frustrating. But it was a cool spot with the one-winged angel off the top, but they had already established that no one is kicked out of the one-winged angel, so I understand that they're respecting Christian slightly, but considering his neck issues, I thought it was an unnecessary risk. It's not like anyone's kicked out of a regular one yet, and I thought that, especially with it wasn't fortunate that he had that happen with his rib, but I think he's hurt, he's spitting up blood at one point. Just why he felt the need to go through with that is just odd to me.
I think,
Um,
part of me thinks it must be one of those things where that's one of those guys. I don't think I've never met the guy, but I would imagine, his tough road with WWE and then getting, a title. When he was in TNA, he was the champion for a bit. He did have a good title run. I liked him as the champ of TNA.
I loved him as the TNA champion. Well, he was the NWA TNA champion. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I loved it.
So in my opinion, I think that's one of those guys who's old school, who believes that, hey, if I'm the last guy on the card, I need to deliver. So I agree with you. He could have taken a regular one-winged angel, and everybody would have been fine with it, knowing that he was spitting up blood. I think we all would have been cool with it. But I think it was one of those things where he just wanted to give the best performance he possibly could, so he took it from the top rope. So all the respect to him, but dude, when you're spitting blood, you have the ultimate excuse to even just take a simple roll up and call it.
Yeah. So I had this at a B- for the match, just because of the overbooked nature, the fact that it didn't feel as good as their first one felt. But again, hey, this was just a setup for the things to come. So, if you want to get into that, we can get into that.
All right, so in true elite fashion, Young Bucks come and they are freaking broken and clear. I respected this because I'm pretty sure they were iced up for real from their last match. They come out along with the other tag team, who are the Impact Tag Champions, and they start just beating the shit out of Christian for no reason. Jurassic Express comes out to try to save them. They're laid out for 6 minutes, despite taking I wouldn't even say a 20th of the offense that was delivered. Anyways, Kenny Omega gets on the mic, and he actually has some good things to say there. What he says is, no one can beat me. Anyone who even has a chance of beating me is either not here, retired, or dead. Lights go out. Adam Cole's music pops up. Adam Cole comes out. And then JR must love this guy, because even JR's like, it's Adam Cole, baby. I was like, all right, this guy, if you get that type of emotional response from JR, you must be over. So Adam Cole comes down. We think he's going to, do the CM Punk babyface thing. Not the case. Super kicks Jungle Boy, my favorite AEW wrestler, right in the face. Gets 3. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega give him a kiss, and they're about to get into some stuff. Kenny Omega's about to, quote-unquote, send everybody home happy. Send them home happy. About does a one-liner. All of a sudden, dun-da-da-da, 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 dun-da-da-da. Daniel Bryan comes in, and honestly, we were on the chat. I thought it was going to be Punk that would come out and save him, because Kenny made that best in the world reference, so I was like, okay, well, this could be it. But no, it is Bryan Daniels, right? Bryan Danielson comes out, freaking saves their ass, beats the crap out of one of the Young Bucks, saves the day, gives hugs to everybody, and sends people home happy. But if you watch the YouTube clip, he had some things to say after the match, and I thought it was very elegant, very cool, and just very on brand for who he is. Basically, he goes on the microphone and he says, look, I'm one of the guys I actually still love where I worked before. So he's not a disgruntled employee, which I think actually speaks louder for AEW, because he's like, hey, I wasn't pissed. I was just, I saw how great you fans were. I saw how great the talent is. And then knowing that he's going to come in and he's going to push some people down, he does the right thing and thanks all the guys who got there before him, who helped establish that platform that already was. And then he sends everybody home happy. Let's see. What letter grade can I give this? Let's see. You brought in 2 A-listers. You immediately freaking raised your company up by about 4 levels. Yeah, A+++++. No, I'm just kidding. It's an A. It's an A for me. That segment's an A just based off of the value it brought to the company. Now, like you said, they just have to not fuck it up. What were your thoughts in general?
The most cathartic 10 minutes I've had as a wrestling fan since the first 10 minutes of CM Punk versus Darby Allin. But before that, the most cathartic 10 minutes I've had as a wrestling fan since probably about 1999.
Yep.
Honestly, they kind of swerved me a little bit because when Omega delivered the or deadline and then the lights went out for a split second, I'm like, did they just bring in Bray Wyatt? Honestly.
Yeah.
And then here's Adam Cole, and I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Him kicking Jungle Boy didn't catch me by surprise because they've been aligned before. Although I will say that I'm intrigued by Adam Cole he's run his own faction the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
The Undisputed Era over in NXT.
Yep.
So I don't know. Him playing second fiddle to Omega, especially being new in the company, is going to be interesting. I think Adam Cole is a better personality than Omega, and candidly, I think he's a better worker. But so that'll be interesting to see. But for now, he's aligned with them. The Flight of the Valkyries hits. I lost my shit, I'll admit. We've had discussions about when was the right time to debut him. This worked.
It did.
That's all you can say. The other thing he said real quick in his in the post after the show went off the air, he also said that there's everyone here thinks they're elite. Well, I'm here to find out if they really are. I loved it.
That was great.
It's fun to be a wrestling fan sometimes, and this is one of those times. So I'm excited to see what the future holds here. If I had to give it a letter grade, I would give it an Arn Anderson. It's a double A.
Double A. Double freaking A. Awesome. All right, folks. Well, there you have it. Actually, before I send us home, what would you give overall? The goods, the bads, the greats, the stupids, the wonderful. What letter grade do you give AEW All Out 2021? What is your letter grade?
It's an A minus. The minus is strictly because of the nasty stench surrounding what they did to MJF. Other than that, I thought this was as perfect a wrestling show as it probably could have been, given the stories heading into this and the talent that they have.
I am gonna agree with you. I'm going one step ahead. I thought A because in one night they just elevated their entire company to a level to the highest level that it has been.
And here's the thing, not to delay us, but just for a minute, SummerSlam was a good show.
Mm-hmm.
We were there obviously in person, but every WWE match for the most part is the same.
Yeah.
Right. And here, surprises aside, and WWE did their fair share of surprising, bringing back Becky Lynch and bringing back Brock Lesnar, but aside from the surprises, there was just a little of everything on this card, between the Eddie Kingston and Miro, the New Japan stuff, the up and coming women bringing in a Ruby Riott, what should have been MJF's crowning moment, but whatever, elevating the new talent, the return of CM Punk, just everything was just spot on. The minus is a minor criticism. I could easily settle for an A, but I will stick by my guns and say it is an A minus.
A minus. Yep, A minus, A for me. I think when you elevate your company in one show, in two moments, dude, here's the thing, and I'm already looking through Twitter, and you see a lot of guys with popularity who are tweeting like, AEW's inspiring me right now. So you literally, think about it like this. There was a group of guys who were probably maybe not the same level as a Bryan Danielson, but were on the periphery there, who were like, I don't know if I want to go to AEW. It's Punk going there, Malachi Black going there, freaking Adam Cole going there. All those guys being there now made AEW cool for guys who are current workers. And I'm gonna make my bold prediction of the year. This is my bold prediction within the next 12 months. We're gonna see a current A-lister in the WWE, a current active A-lister will make a jump to AEW. That's my prediction within the next 12 months. But I will turn it over to you, sir.
Well, the last thing I'll say about this is that, and it's not to compare them against WWE. However, that's where everyone wants to go because, competition, we all want competition. We're a naturally competitive species.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, even being there live at SummerSlam, there were times when some of those matches were just kind of like, all right, can we move past this?
Mm-hmm.
Having to see Xavier Woods come out with a freaking water cannon with the Miz and Morrison was just hard to
with
take.
his little Razor and Ramon type of gimmick.
Yeah. And the best compliment I can give AEW right now is that I don't always agree with everything that they do. I disagree with a lot of people about the Bucks, and I hated what they did with MJF. But from top to bottom, they had my attention. It never seemed to drag, and the best compliment I can give them is that regardless of what's going on, it's at least fun.
You know what? I will give you that. It's fun. No two matches were exactly alike. They all had their own different formulas, and even the ones we didn't disagree with, they were at least different. It wasn't like you're watching the same thing over. It's not like missionary position over and over and over again. Got to give the Roman Reigns call back.
This was definitely not missionary position.
This was not missionary position, I'll tell you that much. All right, so Steve, where can the people at home follow you if they want to stay up to date on all the Steve Slammer news?
Well, I'm on the Instagram. It's Steve_Slammer.
Very nice. Follow him.
I delivered that in a way that made you feel like there was more. There wasn't. That's all that there was.
That's amazing. Well, yeah. Well, that's all you need is an Instagram. All right. You can follow me on Instagram at Jack Slammer Fitness. You can follow me on TikTok at @OJackSlammer. I'm actually about to cross 30,000 followers there, so I'm super stoked on that. Then you can follow us on TikTok at The Slammer Bros. We are on YouTube, and this podcast will be available wherever you choose to listen to podcasts. Also, if you are looking to get into shape this summer, I would love an opportunity to help you out. Go to jackslammer.com, fill out the intake form, and if you mention that you heard about me through this podcast, I will give you 50% off your first month. Because goddamn, I want you to look good. But anyways, thank you folks so much for tuning in to the 14th edition of the Slammer Bros podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.